So over to you.
Thank you. Good morning. How is everybody? Did you enjoy the church service we sat through? This is what it felt like when I was listening to it. It was an interesting take on how psychology of hackers works. Right, today we are going to be talking about sales and business development for technical consultants with the word EEK in the middle of it, because I think a lot of people go, oh crap, sales. How do I do this? What does it mean? I don't like it. Just a quick show of hands. Who likes sales? One of you, two of you, three of you. Okay. That means most of you don't. I'm not going to ask why, but there is going to be a bit of participation, so I will be asking you some questions. But before we go there, just an introduction. So my name's Tim. I run a company called Ogle. We do sales transformation and sales coaching for companies who wants to get better at how they sell. So why this talk? I've spent a long time in sales, and the last 8-10 years has been very much in and around the cybersecurity industry, to the point where I was managing pen testing teams, response teams, forensics, that sort of stuff. And a lot of really deeply technical but massively talented people who I used to work with. And the thing about these people is they became the secret weapons of your business. They became the people who could really open up the client in an amazing way, far better than any of my sales team could. And so therefore I thought, let's do a talk here at Insights, which is clearly focused on a very technical subject of cybersecurity. And I'm going to give you some ideas and some concepts of like how you can possibly look at sales in a more positive sense and give you some ideas of what you can do. Because it's really not that bad. It's not that scary at all. Does that sound okay? Good. So that's like why this talk. Why cybersecurity? My background, I've worked in 3 cybersecurity companies. I've since gone independent. I've worked with many more since, but as an employee, I was working in 3. If you're going to find me on LinkedIn, you'll see where I was, but I'm not going to go into the detail of where that was, but you can find out later. And I think the other interesting thing with cybersecurity, it's really technical, it's really feature-led, especially if you're working for a company that sells a product. Like, it's so easy to go, well, we've got this amazing product, there's all these amazing features, we've got to talk about that all the time. And that is not ideal, because customers generally don't like that stuff. And why is this important to you? I don't know what you all do clearly, but you've all made the choice to come in this room, so that's great, thank you. But I think if you work in any business where you are one of the technical specialists, or not, but if you are, part of your job will be to help you build the client relationships and build out where you go. And you'll probably say, I hate this, I don't like this, these clients, I don't know everything. There's loads of stuff that gets in the way of you wanting to go and have those conversations with clients. However, some of you are probably sort of mid-level junior in your careers. You probably start to go, do I have to get involved in sales? And my answer is probably yes. Because you can be the technical specialist, you can be the best in the world, and they'll think you're good. But quite bluntly, if you can be the person that helps open up new client relationships and helps build that trust with new organisations, you could be the best in the universe. The customers will love you, and your business will love you, and other businesses will love you. So I'm doing this as a sort of a way to try and help you get some steps to build that confidence that you can take some steps in building sales with clients. Although I'm not ever going to call you something it's not. So that's what this talks about. Before we go anywhere, I'd like somebody to share a sales experience that you've received. So is anybody willing to talk about a really, really bad sales experience that you've been on the end of? Cool. Go on, thank you. Tell us, what was it? What did you buy?
Actually, I think we didn't buy ours.
Yeah.
We were looking for cybersecurity training.
Okay.
Digital consultancy, and we wanted a provider to people around basic apparently in that.
Yeah.
We engaged them, they gave us a demo, they went to the point of sale, went to the board, money, companies, have a little amount of I was the person getting chased for a long time. They were pleasantly persistent. It was just unbelievable around because we didn't have the buy-in yet.
Yeah. I love the word pleasantly persistent. Was it pleasant or was it just persistent? Or you just being nice?
Politely.
Yeah. So that in that case, like once you got to the point of like you're not buying it, they were just very pushy.
Because persistent, not aggressively so, but regular.
Okay. Has anybody had a good sales experience? Anybody been on the receiving end when they've gone, I actually enjoyed that, I like that experience? I'm sure you have. But nobody's prepared to talk about
Yeah,
that.
I last year bought a car.
Yeah.
It's a car, but I went to a main dealer and thought, car salesman there, right? Finance sales, I get it. Paid off with it straight away. And I think a lot of the time, salespeople get a bad rep for just trying to push everything on you, but he was really cognizant of what I was looking for, what my electric car. He didn't try to suggest that there was any other, you buy this one because it's more expensive, buy this one because it's less. Really listened to what I was looking for and didn't. My wife was with me, and he spoke to us both the same. I think that sometimes historically people, certainly car sales I've experienced, gravitate towards the low because they perceive that you might have the money. Ironically, it was quite money. So it was a really good experience. There was no heavy pushing of additional products or anything like that, which was really good. I commended it to his boss, saying that it was a really nice experience.
Cool. Good. Two good examples. Thank you. So what you just saw there were two styles of selling. We saw push, which was very much persuade, propose, reason, explain, assert. You must have this by now. If you do this by next week, we'll give you a 10% discount. End of quarter now, and we'll give you 25% off your license fee if you do this by this point. Like that's all pressure, and I don't think many people like that. But lots of companies do it, and that's the thing. That's the thing which I think puts a lot of people off sales, is it feels like you're having to do something which feels disingenuous and unauthentic. And that's not where we all want to be. The converse of that is pull. So literally you're trying to pull the person towards you. And you do that by what I call bridging. So it's like you're trying to find common ground. You're trying to talk to them. You're trying to understand what they're about. In your case, there was two of you and the person who was selling to you. They made sure that they understood both persons' requirements and both persons' needs, rather than just assuming, I need this person, I need to speak to them because they're the buyer and they're irrelevant. So yeah, lots of questioning, like, why do you want this? What's it for? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? Lots of listening, which sounds easy. We'll talk more about listening later. Disclose stuff, if you say, I actually have that same feeling, or I have that same problem, or I experience that too. And genuinely, not just because you're saying it to be similar. You will find it to attract people. In terms of selling, where would you rather be? Push or pull? I certainly know where I operate. One of the best compliments I got last week was from a customer who said to his team, at the conclusion of some work, they went, and I really enjoyed working with Tim because I never felt like I was once being sold to. And that was cool. It was like, cool, that worked. And clearly that's what I was trying to get their team to impart and do as well. Okay, I'm going to go into a bit of theory. So there's not much this is probably the least technical talk of the entire B-Sides talk, but there is one equation coming up shortly, which I will share with you. Has anybody heard of a phrase called consultative selling? Anybody not heard of it? Some of you go, I did. Yeah, cool. Right, so consultative selling is a way of selling to people, to customers, in a way that is meant to help them figure out what their problems are and you help find a way to get a solution. That's what consultative selling is. There's two definitions of this. This is kind of sales 101 stuff for everybody who's been in sales. For everybody who's not been in sales, this is probably new to you. The reason we're trying to help a customer is because we're trying to enhance their client profits. That's ultimately what we're trying to do. And we do that in two ways. We can either reduce their costs or increase their margins. Both of them will increase the profit effectively. And we do that by helping. We're trying to fix something in their business that is not currently working in the most fundamental way. Now that's the highest level of consultative selling definition. The second definition, which I really like actually, because this gives you clues as to what we do. This is like the art of how you sell without being a salesperson. It's to ask questions and identify problems and then collaborate to create a solution together. That's it. That's what sales is. You literally figure out what the other person is about, what they're doing, how they're working, what isn't working, And if you do that, you'll identify the problems, and then you will work in a collaborative manner, which basically means join up, work together, and figure out how to fix whatever it is you're trying to fix. And if you do that, that's kind of good. It's also probably what you do when you meet with your friends and you meet with your family, discussing like problems that you have in your real life. It's probably what you just do naturally as a human being. But the minute we put sales in front of it, you go, oh, I don't like it. So that's what consultative selling is. But before we go any further than that, I'm going to ask you a really big question. What is trust? Let me start with let's dig into this a bit. So, how long does it take to build trust? You want to guess?
I think it depends on the scenario.
Yeah, totally. Like what? Give me some examples. What might be scenarios?
If you're familiar with the person or that product they're trying to sell or something like that, or
sometimes when I ask this question, like, how long does it take to build trust with somebody? Some people say, oh, it takes a long time. It can take weeks, months, years. I would argue actually it can take minutes. It very much does determine on the situation. So let's just say hypothetically, there was a fire alarm now, and there's a fire door there, and our room host went, everybody out, we would all trust you immediately. You look like you know what you're doing within seconds. Whether you do or you don't doesn't matter. We all trust you instantly. There was an example I had a few weeks ago where somebody went, actually, I had a leaking pipe in the roof of my living room, and it was gushing water through my house. And to be fair, I developed trust with the first plumber that would turn up within the first hour of me bringing up, because lots didn't. And so his level of trust went from here to here, and his price point of what he's willing to pay went from there to there, instantly because it was an emergency coming through his house. So trust can be developed very quickly, but you've got to do it the right way. I'm going to give you a few examples. Do you trust that fella?
Hell no.
By the way, I'm putting these examples up. I'm not showing any opinion on this because I'm not allowed. My wife distinctly said, put these up by all means, but do not share your opinion on them. So, I'm not casting an opinion, but I'm just showing you a picture. And the interesting thing with this guy is that a lot of us did clearly trust him because we voted him to be Prime Minister or something at the time. But we did. Enough people in this country voted for this guy to be Prime Minister, therefore we trusted him enough. And then he did stuff and we all went, And now whether we trust him or not is a different thing. Who trusts that fella? Which I know is completely random because he's not even real. It's a fictional character been made up. And yet, people go, yeah, I think I would trust Paddington there.
Trust every morning with my dogs.
Yeah.
TV.
Trusted more than the previous
I know, there's bonkers. And one's fiction, one's completely made up, and our perception is based on like snippets of what we've seen in films and TV. But what's the difference? What's the difference between Boris Johnson and Paddington Bear?
That's right.
Say it, sorry, didn't.
Not a lot.
Yeah, probably not a lot, but one you trust, one you don't, or one you at least want to spend more time with, I don't know. Okay, who's from the north? Sorry.
I'm going to say they exhibit very different values. Five people trust the bear versus an actual person in politics.
Yeah. There's a good reason for why. We'll come back onto Paddington later, because when you come to the equation of what trust actually is, we'll talk about that a bit more. Who's from the northwest? Who's from Lancashire? Most of you, good. Because the next example will resonate with you. Who knows this company? Those of you who don't live in the area, you'll be like, I have no idea what this company is. Boots is the poshest of supermarkets. It's like better than Waitrose. It's pricey, it's super high end, it's super quality, the staff are lovely. It's nice, it's way nicer than Waitrose in my opinion. And all the stuff they buy, they try to source it within like 30, 40 miles of where we are. Like literally from here. And if they can't, then if it's a pineapple, they're going to get it from somewhere else. But like tomatoes, potatoes, carrots, meats, everything is all local. Brilliant store. Loads of people trust it. And yeah, it's really expensive. But if you go in there and you want a treat, you know you're going to get something nice. Which is why I get it from the jungle. So anybody who lives up in this part of the world, that's why people buy foods. And it's quite good it doesn't spread anywhere else in the country, because I think it'd get ruined if it did. Last one, relevant technical one. What's everybody's thoughts on Microsoft? Have anybody from Microsoft in the room? Okay, good. Now, we don't need to debate, but like big multinational, and people have really different opinions on this one, I've found. Some people trust them a lot, some people don't. Depends on the perspective, depends on where you're looking. Really splits opinion in terms of where we are. But the reason I showed you those pictures is because I just wanted to provoke what do you think of trust and where do you sit with it? Because the point of that is when you're dealing with customers and when you're trying to engage relationships, you're trying to build trust with the people around you. You're literally trying to win them over in a sort of nice, authentic way and not a pushy way. That's what we're trying to do. And I would argue that back to the Boris Johnson and Paddington Bear examples, Boris Johnson was very much felt like he was in it for himself. Well, there's nothing Paddington Bear does in the world which is for Paddington Bear's benefit. Nothing. Which might be why there's a difference in how you trust them. Okay, so this is the only singular equation you're going to get in this presentation. If you want to see maths, go to other presentations. There are loads of maths presentations today. I'm sure I'll be looking forward to going to watch them myself. So, this trust equation, I can't take credit for it. This guy called David Mice who developed it, so I'm not taking credit for this at all. If you want to read a book on it, there's a whole book on this subject. But in essence, I'll tell you what it talks about now. Trust equals these things. Trust equals credibility. So credibility can be things like how long you've worked in the industry. It can be my education. It could be your qualifications. And crikey, cybersecurity has a lot of qualifications in it. Certainly if you work in pen testing, you've probably got qualifications up to the eyeball, or you're trying to get them if you haven't got that yet. Companies get ISO 27001, Cyber Essentials, Cyber Essentials Plus. They're all raising the credibility of that company in terms of, yeah, we're secure, we're protecting themselves, if that's what they need to do. So that's all credibility. Any questions, any thoughts on that before I move on? Okay. Next, you've got this thing called reliability. So reliability is pretty obvious to most people. It's basically doing what you say you're going to do. As a human and as a business, if you promise to do something, do it. And it can be as simple as if that meeting starts at 2 o'clock, get there at 5 to 2. Get there 2 minutes before the Zoom call starts, and you're not joining the Zoom call going, oh, crikey, I'm sorry, I was 3 minutes late, I had a technical problem, until they Zoom, it all did that stuff. That's just rubbish. Just get there 2 minutes early and make sure it works. That's correct, that's reliability. That's just like, thinking ahead, putting the other person you're going to speak to first ahead of you and just go, I'm sorry, I'm really late. As a company, it's being consistent in what you deliver and getting that reputation of what you are. But as a person, you can control this an awful lot. Right, third one of these is really interesting. Because it's a word that's not used a lot in business and not used a lot in how we work and how we operate. So it's this thing called intimacy. And by intimacy, I don't mean like having an affair with your colleagues. I don't mean that at all. I mean, how intimate are you with the people you deal with? How well do you know them? How well do you understand their drivers and what's bothering them? What's making them get up every day? What makes them be the person they are? How often do you spend time to think about how intimate you are in that relationship with your colleagues or even the customers that you deal with? Or how often are you sat there going, yeah, well, I can't because I've got the pressure of this deliverable, or I need to do this thing, and that all gets in the way. Let me bring this back to a human example. So imagine you are stood at a bus stop. I know not many of us catch buses all the time, but imagine you are. You probably have stood at a bus stop sometime in your life in the last few years. And when you're stood there and the bus is like 10, 20 minutes wait for it, and there's somebody sat next to you, it's not uncommon to start a conversation with that person who stood next to you, if you're the only two people stood there. Because a couple of minutes in, we have this, I'll say something. And the first questions you're going to ask, or the first thing you might say, is what? If you're stood at a bus stop in Britain with somebody you don't know. Exactly! Everybody says, oh, yeah, the weather's good today, or a bit wet, or whatever. It's something neutral about the weather. And then the second question might be, I wonder when the bus is coming, this bus. How long have you been stood here? Well, I've been here 15 minutes. And then you have a choice. You could continue to talk, or you could shut up. If the person is reacting fairly warmly towards those questions, because they were obviously wanting to just pass the time and break the silence, you might continue the conversation. And questions like, oh, where are you heading today? Would not be an unreasonable question to ask. And then they might go, well, I'm going to X. And you go, oh, right, cool, why are you going there? What takes you there today? Oh, I'm going for this. I've done this, and I do it as a bit of a practice sometimes to see what's going on with people and just to see how this works. And I've discovered people going for job interviews and going to get the greatest thing they can find in the world. I've found people going to the hospital and they're going to see a sick relative and they're deeply worried and concerned and they need to get there at a certain time. And I found out all sorts of stuff from this very, very simple engagement. But the point of it is, it was just a degree of intimacy that built over time. So it started with something really simple. And over time, it developed into something a bit deeper. So in the 10 minutes, you might get quite far through. And I always imagine this as like peeling back an onion. So the layers of the relationship start at the very, very peripheral edge of the relationship, the first layer of an onion, which is, what's the weather like? Or weather's a bit crap today? Or whatever it may be. And as you build through the layers, you start to get deeper into the level of intimacy that's going on in that relationship, in that conversation. And clearly at a bus stop, there's a limit to where you're going to go. But there isn't a limit to where you can go when you do this in work. You can go deeper than you think. Clearly, if the first question you ask somebody is, what do you think about the war in Ukraine? If I was stood next to that person at the bus stop, you're weird. Like, that's a really odd first question. And that's because I haven't developed any intimacy and therefore have not developed any level of trust with that person to start with. But if I ask that question sort of 20 minutes in and we've been talking about all sorts of subjects, they may well answer that question, and we may well talk about it. But there's clearly a time in the build to it, so you've got to layer this through, work your way through. Right, there's something below this equation, the divide by, which completely kills trust dead. And it's this thing called self-orientation. So, by self-orientation, what I mean is by how much you think and put yourself first. By the things and the actions and the way that you operate, how much are you putting yourself first? Because if you put yourself first all the time, nobody will trust you. Make sense? So, quick reflection, how much do you put yourself first? You don't have to answer that, by the way, because that's a massive amount of disclosure in a room of strangers who you don't know. But have a think about it. Have a think about it when you're going outside to speak to the people you haven't met before. How much of that conversation is all about me and how much is all about them? How much are you sat there, I need to speak to this person, I need to tell them all about me. But they run away. If tonight it's like a house party, if you're there, you might get stuck with a person who just talks about themselves for the next 45 minutes. Oh my God, I need to get away. You're not going to hang around for that. And that's what that is. And in companies, it happens all the time. Look, I'm going to tell you about our great product. Here's the 27 features which are amazing. Well, they're amazing to you, but they don't mean anything to me as a customer because I don't actually need any of that stuff. So when you go to talk to customers and you walk into a room like, here's a demo, here's a product demo about our stuff, and you go, yeah, well, I don't know what I want yet. Well, no, but here's the demo because that's what we promised we'd give you. And they go through the 20 minutes of demo and the 30-minute call. And the last 5 minutes of the call, they say, do you want to buy it? How self-orientated is that conversation? But completely self-orientated. Yeah, loads of companies do. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in the job doing what I do. Which I'm really pleased. Keep going, guys, because I'll keep getting paid by companies to do what I do. So this is where I mean, remove your self-orientation. And you as technical people have an influence in this because you can be different. You haven't got this badge called salesperson. You're not expected to sell anything. You're supposed to be there as super capable, super expert, loads of credibility. You've done research, you've written papers, you've got badges, you've got certifications. The customer trusts you because of that. And then if you spend all your time developing intimacy with your client, understanding their business, their problem, what they're trying to do, their goals and their blockers, they will trust you beyond belief. Which is why I started with, I really like working with technical people in the team that I worked with because you could build huge amounts of trust with the client in a way that I couldn't possibly do sometimes. Because they look at me and go, you're selling, and they're not. I clearly managed to dissolve and diffuse that perception, but lots of salespeople don't. Which is why I was like, if I can work with a bunch of technical people today and help you overcome some of this a little bit, you'll be more impactful in how you can develop those client relationships that you can forge with your customers. Before we move on, any questions about this? Okay. I like pictures a lot, because you probably remember the pictures more than my words. At least some of you will. Which is why I put a picture of the universe, and I put a picture of a scary face at the beginning of the pack to make you go, oh, yeah, that's me, I'm scared of sales. And the universe is where you can get to. That's the place you can be in your performance. The reason I put a seesaw is because I would like you to imagine that you are sat at this side of the seesaw, at the high end, and your customer sat at the heavy end. And that's because the weight of your interaction with that person should always be balanced or weighted towards the customer. And if you find that the conversation is all about you, all about your company, all about your features, you've gone too far. You're going to start denting trust. So imagine that season where you're at, and imagine in that conversation, where am I at this moment in time? And if you're in the wrong place, change it. And go back onto, what are you doing? How does this work for you? And be really curious and inquisitive, because that's the natural 4-year-old tendencies that we all seem to lose by about the age of 14. Go back to being 4. And you imagine yourself on the playground. Where do I sit? Okay. So, what makes us self-orientated? In case you haven't guessed already, I would like you to remove and minimize your self-orientation. As a top tip to take away the fear of selling, these things make us self-orientated. So, it's things like wanting to talk about yourself. Now, why do you do that? It might be because you're nervous. It might be because you don't know what to say. You don't know how to act. It might just be because you've got a massive ego and you need to tell everybody about it. It could be all sorts of reasons. And I'm not saying any of you were anything like those things, but those are just perceptions of what happens. But the more you talk about yourself and the less you ask questions and listen to the person you talk to, the less they're going to trust you. It doesn't mean don't disclose things. It doesn't mean talk about yourself. It just means get balance in this. Clearly, wanting to talk about your business, your product, your features, that clearly is a big blocker. How many people have spoken to somebody and feel like they're not listening to you? And how does that make you feel? So don't do it to them. And listening is a really interesting subject. Because it's easy to go, yes, I listen, my ears are open. However, there's this other thing in the way between like listening and understanding, which is our brain. And our brain has filters in it. And our brain is filtered by going, oh, I like that, I don't like that, that sounds weird. You're making conclusions based on what you hear all the time, whether you like it or not. And to truly listen, you need to switch as many of those filters off as you can. And if you're working in a sales capacity, which I have and I work with lots of salespeople do, you need to switch off when a client says, oh, we have a real big problem with X. I need to switch off that. Oh, great, I can sell to that, because if I do, I'm going to come across as completely self-orientated. I literally listened to a call yesterday with another company, and this was their best salesperson, and they were talking to a really big company. And the company, the intro, 2 minutes when the guy introduced himself, like global head of whatever he was, said, yeah, we've got a real big problem with this, in their case, internal communications. Real big problem with internal communications across all our sites and divisions around the places we operate, which they're a global government. But we have a really immediate need in London. And so after this 2 minutes of introduction, the salesperson went, well, there were two choices at this point. The salesperson could have gone, well, tell me more about what's going on with your internal communication. Why is that not working? They didn't do that. They went, so how big is the requirement in London? And I just went, like, you killed it in the first 2 minutes. Like, you look completely self-orientated. You don't give a stuff about this client. All you care about is the deal. What they should have done is spent the next 10 minutes figuring out why internal communications is not working across the company. Get back to London. They've obviously got a need. They can come back later to that. But they didn't. So, not listening is because of filters, it's because of the things in our head where we're interpreting things. Remove them. Try and get purity of what you're hearing as much as you can, and that will help. I've talked about that already, so I won't dwell on it. And the last one, especially if you're technical people, is how you handle a crisis, because often you get involved in crises. The nature of the business that we're in cybersecurity. Stuff doesn't always go right. So therefore, how you handle stuff like this is really interesting. And that's just I've got time for that. Quick story of like how I once handled a crisis. I used to work for a very big bank. Not in cybersecurity. We were running the sales and corporate account management team. And one of our biggest customers was a massive travel company, like global, big travel company, who you have probably booked travel through. And we stopped their booking system dead because we messed something up. So for several hours, they could not transact any kind of business, which is not great when you are a global multi-billion-pound travel organisation. And this got to my desk probably within about 3 minutes of it happening, because it went through the account manager and the team lead, and then it got to me. And I was like, right. And everybody's like, what do we do? We just messed it up. This is like worth, like big clients are really important. It was like, okay. And then I had other people ringing me up going, Tim, you need to get on, so we need to like manage the message. Manage the message to the client really carefully. I'm like, what do you mean by manage the message? Do you mean like try and obfuscate the truth of what's going on here? And they went, no, we don't mean that. Well, what do you mean by manage the message? Well, what's happened? I said, well, what's happened is we cut their credit line and we haven't told them about it. We've just stopped all payments dead. You can't say that. Well, that is the message. And they went, you can't say that to me. Why not? Because they'll guess. And so it wasn't long. It was about 12 minutes in, and this all happened really quickly. And I had people from very high in the bank ringing me up going, you cannot say this. It was like, well, I just did. So I rang up the CFO of this global company and said, we've just stopped your business. And he said, I know. It's because of this. I said, I know. I said, I'm really sorry. We need to talk really quick about how we get this back in place. There's things you can do to help us, but like genuinely, it's something that we've done, and yeah, sorry. And we got it back up and running in about 90 minutes. But the point of that was, we could have obfuscated, we could have managed the message, but it was better just to go clean. And that CFO still speaks to me. He doesn't work at that said travel company anymore. But we did a lot of work together, and we did a lot more work, because the level of trust went from here to here. Because I was honest. And I wasn't self-orientated in managing the message that went out of the company. And if you're working in cybersecurity, you're going to come across incidents like that. Not necessarily when you drop the credit line, but there will be places where there's breaches, there's hacks, there's mess-ups, there's cock-ups, configuration, anything that will mess things up. It will stop things working for your customers. So don't manage the message that way. Be pure. Have faith in the trust that you can go through it. Okay. Good. Right, so I'm covering quite a lot of ground today, I know, but I'm trying to give you like the top tips of where you can take this. There is this thing called customer buying cycle, which is the psychology of people when people go through sales. And we could go through this for hours, but I'm going to try and paraphrase it to the chance of this. Whenever somebody buys something, the first thing they need to do is they go through this thing at the top called awareness of needs, which is basically, I wake up one day and think I need something. I don't know what it is yet, but I've got a sense that there's something I need to fix somewhere. There's something going on in my world. And if it's a business, it might be, I don't know, we're spending too much money on X, or we're not getting the performance we need out of Y. But if it's personally, I'm literally sat here at the minute going, I'm really happy with the 2 cars we have parked on the drive. And I said to myself, I'm going to keep one of them for 10 years, but there's something niggling in the back of my head going, I might want a new one. I don't want it yet, but it's building. My awareness of need is starting to grow. That might take 6 months to 6 years to form out, but it's going through my head at the moment. And I've said to myself, I don't want to buy another car for 10 years because I just don't want to. But I'm probably going to break my own rule in about 5 years' time and do it anyway. And that's because of this awareness of need. And that's all sorts of things going through my head. I see other things. I see advertising. I see my friends. I see my cars getting more data than they used to. All that stuff will just play in my head a bit. And the same thing happens with your clients. They'll be sat there going, yeah, there's something in my business, yeah, it's not quite right, yeah, but I can live with it. Second thing, once they've decided they need something, they go and assess alternatives. This is where most companies go and play. Lots of companies don't play in that first box, because it's quite tricky to find, it's not obvious. This could be really obvious, because the company just issued a request for proposal where they've run a competition, they want something. So that assessment of alternative is really obvious. Let's go and submit a proposal. Trouble is, your competitor got in at the way of submitting completely shaped what they need. So now you're competing against somebody you're not going to win against. And then when they decide they want to spend £1 million on great new product X, they have to go, can we afford it? That's a lot of money. There's a lot of risk in there. How do we mitigate that? How do we manage that decision to make sure it's the right one? And then they decide, and then they go deliver it, and then all good. So where do you play? Awareness of needs. You guys can play really well in this place. So if ever you're sat in some broad open discussion with a customer, whether it be a customer meeting, events, seminars, quarterly annual reviews, whatever it is, technical, like project reviews, whatever it may be, just be bloody curious. Just ask questions like, how's it going? How's the business? How's that working? Tell me more about that. That's a great question to ask. If they say something like, oh yeah, this isn't working quite as well as you wanted, it's really interesting. Tell me more about that. It's a brilliant question to ask everybody. Because it shows your interest, it shows you're curious. But genuinely then follow it through. Like, how long has that been happening? How long has that been going on? So they're like some samples of curiosity questions I propose you sort of take away thinking about and start using with the people you deal with. As you get through to the assessment of alternatives, demos drive me nuts. Who does demos here? Who's like involved in doing company demos? Nobody? Okay, cool. This isn't relevant to you lot then. But if it was relevant, demos are really bad because as soon as you go buy solution tech companies who just go, here's our demo, 20 minutes, regardless of what it is you want to buy, I'm going to show you my standard demo. And I propose, do it through storytelling. Start completely differently, start figuring out what the client needs, what they want, and then do the demo, tell the story of what they're after. Some of you may get involved in proposal writing, right? We want this technical piece on like how we're going to satisfy this thing. That's what you do there. You sort of tell based on their needs, not just what our usual boilerplate technical stuff was. This is an interesting one. Because you're technical, you know about this subject really, really well. So my theory here is go stress test their thinking. And stress test it by asking questions. Okay, so you're about to go and commit to this new thing. What are you worried about? What sort of things are concerning you? Have you thought about, and you probably know what the 3 or 4 pitfalls are going to be. Have you thought about X? Have you thought about Y? What's your plan to overcome Z? That's what I mean by stress testing. Go and be that consultative, trusted advisor because you're asking things of them which will be really useful to them. And basically just be really open to answer questions. Any questions before I jump on? Okay. And then the last place that we can play, apart from obviously achieving results and delivering what we do, at this point when they're trying to manage risk, provide reference customers, so you may have the best relationships with some of the most interesting people in your customer base. If you can open up that link to a potential future customer and get that really honest, open, technical to technical conversation going on, that will help alleviate a lot of risk in their decision making. Offer your expertise and critique and insight, a bit like stress testing their thinking, but just take it a bit further. And share stories of similar situations you've seen. I've seen this in this company, in this example. And it just brings more confidence back to that credibility point when you're building trust with the client. Okay, I'm nearly done. I could have made this talk last an hour and a half, and I have made it last a whole day in some companies. And it's clearly a lot more interactive workshop type environment. But today I'm just throwing it at you and see what sticks. And see how much you take away. So I have built simplifying sales top tips. If there is a slide you want to take a photo of, it's probably this one. I'm going to finish the whole build. There's 4 bits to it. So if you want a slide to photo, this will be useful for you to take away. Number 1, credibility. Remember to build credibility. So things like company track record, your qualifications, your case studies, awards, All of that will build credibility. Don't forget it. Be reliable. I know that sounds really, really, really obvious, but be as reliable as you can be. Turn up on time, do what you say. If you said you're going to deliver that report, that feedback, or that action by Wednesday at 4 o'clock, do it by Wednesday at 5 to 4, or earlier. If you're going to turn up to the Zoom meeting, don't turn up 3 minutes late because you said, oh, I didn't realise Zoom was about to go and upload itself and deconfigure and things like that. Just do that 3 minutes before the meeting so you turn up on time. And then there's an interesting one called consistency of behaviour, which is a bit more subtle. So, if somebody comes at you, friend or colleague or customer, and they come at you with really exciting news, and you go, yeah, it's amazing. Or they come at you with really bad feedback, I really don't like that, and you get all angry and defensive. That's not very consistent. And you may feel some of that stuff. If you are somebody who has a tendency to have extremes of reaction to personality, try to level it out a bit so that you do show some dissatisfaction or happiness around that, but don't go mental on both extremes, because if you do, people won't know what to do when they come with you with feedback or questions or ideas, because they'll think, I don't know how they're going to react. So it's an interesting one just to have a think about, is that have that level consistency of behaviour of when you play. And try it, certainly when you're dealing with your customers, just always be that calm, predictable, steady. Like in the case of when the CFO for the travel company rang me up, I wasn't panicking. I wasn't trying to be defensive. I was just there in the moment and say, yeah, it's really bad. I'm really sorry, and honest. But equally, when we won the award to go and grow the account and take it to all the places, I wasn't like, yeah, it's amazing. I was like, cool, thank you. That's really good of you. Thank you for giving us the business. It was a similar sort of level of response, but just honest and pure. Intimacy. Imagine you're stood next to the person at the bus stop next time you're stood talking to your client. How much do you know about your clients? I know people say it's a cliche to talk about football teams and kids and families and all that stuff. And not everybody will want to talk about that stuff. And certainly lots of people in cybersecurity don't like football either, I found. Which is cool. My son hates football, which is devastating to me. I'm leaving no legacy of support for the club I support, but that's fine. But yeah, remember, ask how people are. Just start with simple stuff. And if you're talking to somebody in a business context, how are you getting on? How's the business going? It's a really great question. How's the business going? Is an amazing starting point question for anybody anywhere. If you don't want to go into personal stuff, start on business stuff. How's your business going? How's it going? And they'll answer. And then just respond. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. That's really interesting. And see what they say. So explore, spend time exploring. Share feelings, well, that sounds exciting, well, that doesn't sound very good, or that sounds a bit risky, or, express some vulnerability. Well, I've had that similar situation, yes, I felt that when this happened too. Because we're only human, we're only normal. You've got to make time for it, and then this is the one I added in for you especially. I don't put this on for sales people. I put this in for you lot today, this bottom bullet, because it's the most important one. This is your superpower. You are not salespeople. It's really cool, you're not. So you walk into a room with clients and they trust you because you're not a salesperson. So use it. And be curious and ask questions, and don't sit there going, I need to talk to the person about all the stuff I know, because you don't. They don't want to know about everything you know yet. They might do, but they don't today, because you don't know what they need. So use that as your superpower, so that you can win more trust with the clients. And that's also what I'm trying to help you do here, is think about the structure of how you can be more trust building. Clearly, you need to remove or minimize your self-orientation. Remember the seesaw. Be curious. Curiosity is something we innately get born with when we're really young. And honestly, we all lose it about 10 to 15. It disappears in our psychology some reason. Get it back. Go be super curious about everything around you in the world, including your customers. And you'll find that they like you for it quite a lot. Because you'll start asking great questions. And people are like, well, what's a great question? Well, the great question is the one that's most inquisitive about the thing that you just heard. So I can't tell you what the great question is, because it depends what they said. But remove your filter, you'll stop thinking about it too much, you'll just ask. Support and empathise if they're having a hard time. which as technical people you probably can, because you probably understand that situation better than anybody else around you. And then finally, play as a team. You are not in this on your own. I know certainly firsthand we've got this client meeting coming up. One of my pen test team, could you come with us to this meeting in a second? Yeah, it's like, okay, don't worry, it's fine. I don't know everything. Here's what they'll say. You don't need to know anything. You just need to be in the room and be curious and ask questions. And that's because I was like nice and, I was like, but we're going to be better as a team if we go in as a team rather than just like push and try and sell them something. So that's really important. Play as a team. Share, bounce things off each other, brainstorm. Like, there's a lot of preparation goes into sales meetings, there is. But you can play an amazing part in that because you are this super weapon person who hasn't got sales type in there. Okay, I'm going to leave you with one final picture. And the reason I'm showing you this picture is because I'd like you to imagine you're the person stood there in the red coats. And that landscape in front of you with lots of valleys and lots of mountains in it is your customer base, or potentially even just one customer. And what people tend to do is they might go and wander into that valley over there, and they go in there and they feel pretty comfortable because, they've been there and it's like, it's familiar. I know a lot of people in the room. They don't shout at me. They make me feel welcome in the turn. I feel like I can have this level of understanding when I walk into that client and they're okay. However, that only helps you get there. And your client might have 14 other really deep valleys and deep problems that they currently have, but you don't know about. So unless you take time to be curious and go and figure out what's going on elsewhere and just be naturally, how's that work? You might suddenly find you're in this next valley over on the left that you've never been in before, with a load of new people, which might feel a bit like not that comfortable in if they don't know anybody. That doesn't matter. Just be naturally curious and go and figure out what's going on. And if you do that, you might start finding, if you dig out all sorts of new opportunities, which you can bring back to the business. I've just been in this new valley over here, and they've got a problem with this. It doesn't mean you've got to sell that problem. It just means you've found the problem. Now, as a team, figure out how you can do something about it. Okay. I will stop there. At that point, has anybody got any questions about anything? Because we've got a few minutes left before we're technically going to go for coffee. So, if anybody wants to know anything about anything, now is the time to ask. Yes.
So, I was going to ask a question. That was really interesting. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
When you get to that point, actually, when you move from asking nice questions and getting to know somebody, I can't help the cynical part of my brain going, that's when you're speaking to me. When you kind of move from that to the I'm selling you something. How do you stop that kind of when you've done all the hard work? I guess in the back of your mind maybe you are looking to sell something, or somebody's looking to sell something to you. How do you stop your mind ultimately going, or how do you make that transition? How do you ultimately sell, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You've done all that, how do you?
Yeah, if you were a room of salespeople, I'd be going deep into that point, yes.
Right.
But you're not, so I haven't done that today. So what would I do? You get really, really good at understanding the problem, like genuinely figuring it out, and also to the point where the customer goes, I've got a problem there, and I acknowledge that I've got a problem. So they're going to feel the sense of, I need to do something about it. So you missed one of my other slides, I think, which was like I talked about collaboration. When you get to that point of mutual understanding that there is a problem, you've got to then show collaborative behaviour about how you then build something together, rather than just go, here's the problem. And that collaboration, if it's something simple you're trying, it could be as simple as, you've got a real problem with the potential vulnerability of your systems and your web apps or whatever. I know you're using pen test for aid to do some of this stuff to test them, but what if we came up with another solution which did a bit of pen testing, a bit of scanning, and we reduced the cost of it, so we got more coverage. So we're helping you save a bit of money, we're getting more verification, more secure. And they go, we love that, that would be really helpful. Okay, so at that point, how about we shape some solution that can help fix that? And we go, let's do that. And I haven't got a price on anything yet, we haven't got there. But that's how I would start to navigate across into that. I know it's simple and it's not an exact science, but that's what I do. Any other questions? Cool.
Is there fundamentally a difference between sale to a new customer versus upselling an established relationship?
Depends who you ask. So is there a difference between a new customer and upselling to an existing customer? I mean, there is, because you've already got a foothold in the existing customer. But fundamentally, no. You're still trying to figure out what the problems are, what's going on, what they're trying to fix. It's the same in both directions. I think the interesting thing for me is upselling existing customers. There's a lot of salespeople who don't like doing that because they're going to disrupt the relationship that they have, because they say, we've got a really good relationship with this person. If I go and speak to part of that business B, they're not going to like me. That is an interesting dynamic that happens. I don't always believe it, because I think you need to be a bit more brave about just having that sort of jump across. You're genuinely trying to be curious, remove your self-orientation, you're trying to help, you're trying to be that trusted advisor. So no, I don't think there is a lot of difference technically in how you do it. It's just the fears of how we think about it. Any more? Okay, cool. It's now coffee time. Thank you so much for listening.